Hey everybody, John from Bike Fit Advisor. Today we're going to try and shed some light on a topic that I get asked about a lot, and that is if you ride a road bike and you ride it with a standard SPD or 2-bolt clip pedals, would you be better off if you switched to a traditional road pedal and road shoe combination? Is it more efficient? So we're going to get into that. Okay, so what we're talking about is a pedal like this. This is a standard SPD. It uses a 2-bolt cleat, which is just a small metal cleat, just like that clips in here. And what we're wondering is if this is used on a road bike, is this more, or is it less efficient than using, a standard? This is actually a Look knockoff pedal, which uses this cleat here. Is it more, or is it less efficient than a road pedal? And there's many types of road pedals. We have the Look variety. They're very similar to like the Shimano, the SPDR, which uses a cleat like that. And then of course we have the Speedplays, which use a larger cleat with a small lollipop type pedal. And so what we're trying to figure out here is, if you have a road bike, can you just use these, or are you benefiting a great deal by having a road pedal? Okay, so now that we know a little bit about the pedals and what they look like, and if you haven't seen some of these before, now we can kind of get into what questions do we need to answer. So what characteristics of the pedals can we use to sort of separate them and differentiate them? And as best as I could come up with, I kind of came up with 5 different questions to answer, 5 different categories to rate these in. And whether these categories actually break them up, whether they're actually important or not in certain cases. So I broke it down into these 5 areas, and really it's the last 2 that are probably the most important and the most pertinent. The first question is one type of pedal easier or harder to get in and out of? And I got to be honest, I've ridden all sorts of different varieties of the SPDs and road pedals, whether they're Speedplays or the Shimano SPDR or the Looks, and frankly, there are some pedals that are more difficult to get out of and get into than others, and it's kind of pretty much equal on both sides. I think the nicer pedals are on both sides, whether it is a nicer SPD or a nicer, Look pedal, for instance. I think that one's just a wash. I think they're probably about equal. Some people will find some are a little easier to get in and out of. Most pedals, both of these, like for instance, they both have means for making the release tension lighter or stiffer. So it's kind of about the same for both of those. The next category is aerodynamics, and I only bring this up because a bunch of the manufacturers do note it on their websites that their pedal is more aerodynamic than the other guy. I have a hard time with this one. One, a pedal is, a fairly small thing to have an aerodynamic worry about. Now, granted, I'm sure there is a difference. I'm not sure how much of a difference it is for most people, and furthermore, I'd have to do some more research to figure out. It wasn't clear based on the websites and everything, because a lot of times they don't publish these studies, they don't make them available. And my guess though is that it's probably tested with the pedal with a shoe on it, I'm sure clipped stationary and tested in a wind tunnel. I don't know how useful this really is, because one, the pedal is always moving, and so you have this dynamic thing moving around. And okay, so if it is held in one place, how much does that really tell us about its true aerodynamics? And the other thing is the rider's foot angle is going to vary between individuals at different points of the pedal stroke. So some people will have they'll be in a posture where the pedal itself is less visible to the wind than if it was held in a different posture, especially like a more foot flat posture. So again, this would be a really tough sell for me to convince me that, hey, the aerodynamics are much better on one over the other. One, very small to begin with, and small things tend to be really difficult to tease out in a wind tunnel anyway. And furthermore, a lot of variability between riders. The third category is cornering clearance. Again, this is kind of another one that I'm kind of lukewarm on. This is something that gets brought up. It's mentioned on the Speedplay website a couple of times. Like I said, very lukewarm on this one. I don't know a whole bunch of riders that are really concerned about their pedal clipping the ground when they turn. Not because it doesn't happen, but most people riding are not racing. But even if you are, most people do descend with the inside pedal raised. Now, yes, sometimes you do pedal through corners. So in that very specific example, it might allow someone to lean 1 degree further. I think they claim 1 or 2 degrees, something like that, more than the other guy. Again, I think this is probably a very fringe at best worry for most people. Many people don't ride aggressively enough or ride in this manner to really to give it much concern necessarily. So this one, I kind of, yeah. When I wrote my notes, I kind of was, on the aerodynamics part, I was kind of meh about it. And then also for the cornering clearance, kind of double meh. It's kind of, nah, I'm not sure that there's a whole bunch there. Yes, it probably does apply to some people, and some people will really appreciate it, but I think that's a very small subset. So now the fourth characteristic is, does one pedal system elicit different mechanics in the rider than another? And since we're specifically trying to discern the difference between a road style pedal and SPD, I've been bike fitting for a long time. I've used some infrared motion capture measurement technology for a long time, and I've done many bike fits. In fact, I've had probably hundreds of clients where they've come in on their road bike and on their mountain bike, and we've tested a road pedal and a mountain bike pedal. When I've done this, I haven't noticed many drastic differences in some of the pedaling mechanics that the rider has. Generally, if on the road pedals, if they had a knee that was doing, some little funny S pattern or a little parenthetical type of movement, the same thing was happening on their SPDs as well. But it gets difficult too because the position of the two bikes is so different that the position can affect and the posture can affect the mechanics. And so truly the best way to test this would be to have somebody or have many people tested on one bike with both pedal systems and then adjust, adjust the saddle height appropriately for the stack heights, etc. But, and that's actually something I think I'm going to do, and it's going to be a follow-up to this video. It won't be out right away, but I'm going to try and, I actually have a couple of clients coming in and we're going to do some tests in that exact vein so that we can, so I can get a little bit more specific and a little more data on that. And frankly, in a perfect world, we'd love to have more things, things that we could only test in a lab environment, like oxygen consumption and some different pedaling kinematic things as far as the pedals go. But we'll make do with what we have and see to the best we can what's going on. But again, to sum up, I have not seen any huge differences when we have tested one to the next. But more on that coming up. Our fifth and final question is, does the bigger platform, the bigger cleat, the bigger pedal itself, does that then translate into better efficiency or more power? And I got to start by saying I did a bunch of digging to try and find out if there was any actual research done on this. I have yet to find anything that really points to these things being tested against each other for efficiency. Based on, you have to always take with a grain of salt what you read from the manufacturer because they have their own testing and research. Generally, they don't release a lot of that information. And what they do release is usually kind of heavily crafted to, in a lot of instances to kind of fit their story. So I have a tough time trusting any of that anyway. When I do look on the websites, though, they're really careful with their wording, and they really don't make any specific claims most of the time. They just talk vaguely about that the new design is secure, stable, light, and powerful, and that's all they'll say. They won't say it provides this benefit, over these other guys, or it's 12% more efficient. None of that. They actually they very infrequently will put anything of substance, and even then they really don't provide any data to it. So the way I look at this, and maybe this is part of the reason why, honestly, and this is what I tell clients, that maybe they only ride an SPD, and that's what kind of brought this up. I have a number of clients where they have SPDs and they ride them on their mountain bike and their road bike. And in fact, I do the same thing. I'm just more comfortable. I like my SPDs. I like my mountain bike shoes. So I just wear them on both bikes. It's not for everybody. I'm not racing anymore, so I don't care. But I've been asked many times, should I switch to a road pedal? Do I need something with a bigger platform to really, to quote unquote, really be a road rider? Especially all the, the research I've done and the lack of research that I've found, it just sort of supports the opinion that I've kind of had for many years, is that I can't really give anybody a good explanation of why this would be less efficient than this, especially when we know now how stiff all the shoes have become, whether they're road or mountain bike shoes. For instance, these are my mountain bike shoes. I've had them on here a bunch if you've seen them. I'm not sponsored by Bont, although at this point they probably should send me something. But these shoes are as stiff as really any road shoe I've ever had, even with a small cleat on the bottom of there, on a, reasonably small platform of a pedal. I think most of the distribution of power, regardless of how big the platform is, really comes down to the shoe itself and the stiffness of that, and then the cleat placement. I really have a hard time believing that if I had this on this shoe right here, that would be less powerful or less stiff than if I were able to get, say, this big pedal, that's the wrong side obviously, but onto this shoe. That perhaps some people feel more secure with a bigger platform. I've heard many people relate, like maybe during sprinting or something like that. I don't know. For years, I even raced on with mountain bikes on these, and sprinting never was really an issue. I'm sure other people have other experiences, but based on this, again, the stiffness of the shoes these days and what's available, I have a hard time thinking and a hard time believing that this would be any less efficient than that. So take that for what it's worth. It is, again, because of the lack of information out there, a lot of this is just my opinion. And please, if anybody out there does know of a study, can send me a link to a study, anything like that, I'm more than happy to read anything about this. Or if anyone gets their hands somehow on some of the manufacturer's raw studies, I'm not sure how that would happen, but I'd be really curious to see any of that. And perhaps I'd change my mind. I don't know. Maybe I'd be convinced that, hey, these are way better. I don't know. But for right now, any clients out there, especially if you're not racing on if you're not racing on even a regular basis, I really can't give you a good reason why you shouldn't just stick with your SPDs. So look for, again, it won't be this week, but I'm going to try and get this done for next week, hopefully. Look for another video coming up here, and I'll post a link to it up here when it is available, for kind of some testing I do with some clients on a single bike with different pedal systems to see if there's, really any functional or mechanical difference. And that's it for now. Thanks for hanging in there. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and let me know your experience with different pedals, what you've experienced. I know everyone's going to have their favorite pedals, and that's fine. Yeah, let me know if you've had any experience with this type of thing. Check out some of my other videos, and if you haven't, I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.